if you live according to the flesh, you will die. The first reading is placing before the believer his duties as a baptized Christian, and it applies to us all. Listen. Our generation is at greater risk than any other, because the devil always finds the weak point in a soul, in an assembly, in a community, even in a marriage. And there he will zoom in, do his worst, and bring the whole thing down. And he knows full well that he has a weapon on his side in our very constitution, that of our flesh, linked, of course, while we're in this life, with the mind and therefore the soul. And although the soul can and will, until the last day at least, live without the body, right now it is inseparably linked to it, and what the devil is doing is making sure that that higher part that will go on, that can never stop being, is brought down and brought to lower things than that for which it is intended. Now, if you don't believe me, look around you. Open your eyes. Wherever they settle, and that can be even more so if you go too much into screens, whatever their nature, you will find that the flesh dominates. Things that pop up on screens are not popping up just by chance. They're popping up because you know who is pushing them up. So every time you look at them at length, open them even worse, engage with them even more, you are dancing with demons and playing exactly the game that they want. Now multiply that with a culture and you're in big trouble. Massively, human beings right now are being solicited by all this to engage in their lower nature, the flesh. And massively, a high proportion of their energy, their mental and spiritual energy, is therefore being drained into that domain. Now, traditionally, in the teaching of the Church, the sacrament of holy matrimony is a healer for the concupiscencia carnis, as well as being the divine means of creating angels for heaven. By the way, the two are inseparable. And if one starts to separate them and to use one as a toy, deflecting it from its divine end, then again one is in trouble. And John, or rather Paul VI, was very courageous in that encyclical in 1968 when he went to the real problem. It was an insight given by the Holy Ghost against the predominant culture coming in, that this domain does not belong to man as a toy. It is divine, and under divine authority is it to be executed. And therefore, to play that other game, which is now massively out there, the toy game, is to be short-sighted. Now, this, my friends, concerns every member of the human race. It is true that quite a few, especially in the consecrated life, are given special graces so that it doesn't become the centre of attention. It doesn't have to be. And also they're given instincts not to look at certain things, not to talk about certain things. So there's a certain protection inbuilt in the state because one is called apart all the time to prayer with the author of purity, engaging therefore in the divine all the time, and seeing mentally that the other is incompatible. But that's not the case out there massively for the undefended. And those undefended can be children. Be careful! You must not cause scandal, and that can just be by omission, letting them play with certain friends or look at certain things uncontrolled and unmonitored. The consequences follow. I tell you, there are children already addicted to porn. Demons in their soul, even before purity. With regard to deviations, it's again more of the same thing. It's playing with the toy bit. And let's get this straight. Certain categories of people haven't a privilege on this one. Everyone has to live according to his state, purely and chastely. Even a married person has to be faithful to one person alone and never look at other bodies virtually, or even actually to engage too fraternally with a non-spouse, going over the top. But to go into a situation of officially having just the toy bit used, officially, is actually nonsense. And one can't say they have a special privilege. Let's get this straight. What's the logic behind that? It does not make sense. It can only, however, be looked at correctly in that divine domain in which we are operating, creating angels. And by the way, it is not against the devil's wish that there should be a progressive cutting down of new prospective angels. Anything to eliminate the precious gift of life. It's all a bit of the same. I want to suggest to you another mode, that of what the Apostle speaks here. Those who are led by the Spirit. Now that means that one can cooperate with the grace of the sacraments to live in a certain way, refocused. And by the way, on this one, it's easy not to start. I mean, beginnings check, and consequences follow. It's the first step. If the first step is not controlled, in causa, the rest will follow. So going into a bad site, a bad program, a bad book, is more of the same. The consequences will follow, but already there, the choice is made. So one can get used to not making that initial choice, having the instinct, no, I'm not playing with that demon. And this, by the way, is not of today. The literature of the Desert Fathers, the apophthegmata, the sayings, the stories, all actually have a backdrop of the spiritual combat in which this particular demon and his friends are part of the parcel. Classically, it's put like this. The end is the kingdom of heaven. But the means, therefore the immediate end, by which that is achieved, the conquering of, is purity of heart. And that's the battleground. And they knew that the demons played on two bits of the imagination in particular. One was to solicit the will by the imagination, to which the devil has a certain access, by putting images in front of the mind's eye. And remember now, in the desert there was not much distraction. Classically, there will be of two kinds. One, to destroy the edifice of charity in such a way that there was in the soul of prayer this feeling of anger and revenge and hatred by placing before the mind's eye this one or that one who had done harm. That can be the mode of prayer. But can it be? He succeeded in making that person at prayer a hater of souls, incapable of love. So he's destroyed the purity of heart. And the other was this, that absence of consolation which was in the desert, linked with the flesh. He would bring before the mind's eye all kinds of imaginations, not only of the past, but also of the possible future. Temptation, the carrot before the eye. Nothing new under the sun. There are many stories about this. One time, a monk had to go to the local village to sell the produce of the monks, little baskets, that kind of thing, and purchase a few things for the brethren. When he got to the marketplace, he saw a demon, and he was in this position. He was amazed. Apparently, he had nothing to do. All he did was place something in their mind to solicit their will, and they obeyed him immediately. Then the monk got back into the desert, and as he was passing the cell of a young monk, he saw 40 ferocious demons hovering around him, trying to bring him down with a temptation against holy purity. And they weren't succeeding. There is a story told about what was shared by one of the brethren on one occasion. It's this. He was the son of the high priest of a pagan cult. And here we're in the beginnings of Christianity. So it's possible in the period of the desert, the 200s. And this son of the high priest of the pagan cult reported this. My father one day was officiating, and he overheard a conversation. It was among demons. Lucifer was there, and this demon came and said, I managed today to make a man commit a grave sin of robbery. How long did you take? A few weeks. Thrash him! But the demon came up. Today I managed to make a man fall into the sin of murder. How long did you take? 2 years. Thrash him! And eventually his other demon came up a little nervous and said, I managed to make one of the brethren in the desert fall into a sin of impurity. You did what? Place him here on the throne next to me and crown him. My friends, the demon means business. Don't play with him, because if you do, you'll be conquered. The only victory in this one, say the fathers, is escape. One doesn't entertain it. One goes to something which will distract you. And what will distract you better than adoration of Jesus Christ, King of peace?